You know, sometimes I forget I'm even paying for GitHub Copilot. And today I saw this tweet come across about GitHub Copilot agents. So it caught my attention, and I dug into the article, and we're going to talk about that today. And I'll show you some of the stuff I did today in a production database. I captured about 3 hours worth of things that I was able to do today. But I'm going to fast forward some of it at about 2x speed, and I'm going to walk through the things that worked well, and I'll talk through some of the things that I did after I quit recording as well. Anyway, let me jump into some of the details here. All right, so this is the GitHub Copilot that Agent Awakens blog post. And I will tell you, I've been using GitHub Copilot since 2021, but honestly, I literally sometimes forget I have it. I've been paying for it since I started charging $10 a month. I'd have to look up the exact date, but I think it was like a year later. But I know for a while it was free. So I did the free version, then I started paying, and I still pay for it. And the autocomplete alone just made it worth it when I first did it. Like that was back in 2021, it's before we had like Klein and Root Code and Claude and things like that. But it was a really good like autocomplete tool. But this actually excited me. So I'm going to just play this video here and let you guys kind of listen
Copilot,
along.
an even more powerful AI pair programmer. We have a website called RunnerTracks, which has a page that shows the results of a race. We want to improve the paging for our table, as there can often be a lot of participants.
I will say this is kind of a simple example, and some of the stuff I'll show you, I start simple, but I get a little bit more complex. But this is still kind of
We can
interesting.
use Copilot Chat to make a change to the spell file we have open here. I'm going to use the model picker and
The other thing I want to point out here is Claude 3.5 Sonnet Preview doesn't actually have vision, so I'm kind of disappointed by that. But it's been a while since I dug into Copilot. I'm happy to see this because in the old version, I didn't have this choice. One thing to note is up here in the top right, you can kind of see where my mouse cursor is. You have to click on that to actually get to the agent view. The view he's in right now is the Ask Copilot. You really want this view. And I'll show you how to set this up here in a minute.
choose one of our newest options, OpenAI's O3 Mini. We ask Copilot Chat to make the buttons look prettier, then apply the suggested changes. Let's check, and yes, those blue buttons look much nicer,
Not sure I like the blue buttons, but yeah, I get the point there. It did actually
so let's
work.
accept the change. With that complete, let's keep iterating. We want to let the user select how many rows they want on each page. This will require more than just one file change. Copilot edits can make suggestions across a number of files. We can let Copilot find the files to change, but let's add in a few files to the working set and then ask for the change. You'll see in this case, I'm using Claude 3.5 Sonnet, demonstrating the ability to select different models. Copilot edits has the suggested changes to all three of those files.
So what I really like about this feature, and what I did that I didn't capture a lot of footage of, is if you know what files need to be changed, which I typically do, you can kind of point it in that direction, which I can kind of do in Rue code as well. But I actually really like the way it's been implemented in GitHub Copilot, especially the approval process. I'll show you kind of how that works here in a
In
second.
one go. It even gives me a summary of the changes it's made. Let's save, take a look at the site, and there we go, a working dropdown to select how many rows the table should display. Let's turn our attention to an even more complex.
So now he's going to get into the agent stuff, and this is what most of my footage is going to be about, what I'm going to spend most of this video talking about, because I'm most excited about this feature, because all the other stuff I've kind of had before, to be honest.
Task. Our Runner Tracks website has a page listing races, and we want the ability to search for a race by name. This is going to require changes to a number of files in our project: services, server-side code, UI, and tests. Copilot now supports agent mode, allowing it to
So one thing to note is here, look how vague his prompt is. And this is what I wanted to kind of start with. It's like in root code, a lot of times I give the file name. And in this case, he's not actually giving file names or any context for files.
over an entire project to perform complex operations. Copilot starts by exploring our project to determine what updates need to be made. It begins updating the backend service, and then the UI making the necessary changes. Once it completes those, it turns its attention to the tests, the unit tests for the service and the page, and the end-to-end tests.
Now, this is a pretty simple repo. The one I'm going to show you has about 100,000 files in it, but if you don't count like some of the extra stuff that you kind of bring in, like node modules, it's about 2,000 or 3,000 files in it, so it's a little bit harder. You'll kind of see some of that in my video.
With the test updated, we're then prompted to run the unit tests. Our unit tests fail because the existing ones didn't align with the new functionality. Copilot detects this issue and makes the changes, prompting us to then rerun the tests. When those succeed, we're prompted then to run the end-to-end test.
This is very similar to kind of like root code because it'll see something failed and then go back and fix it. I haven't actually tested it with like my unit tests before. So I actually want to see if I can do this in root code, but this is really cool because he actually called out updating the unit test and it picked up that he needed to run those.
Tests. We can see.
Another thing to point out is he's using Claude 3.5 Sonnet, which I do believe is probably the best model in my experience for being that they have available for being able to run across multiple
I
files.
forgot to stop another testing process that was using the port. Fortunately, Copilot is there to help me out, generating the command to stop the process and run the tests. Everything passes, and if I look at the website one more time, I can see the new functionality. With the new updates to Visual Studio Code and GitHub Copilot, you have an additional set of capabilities to allow you to be even more productive.
So isn't that really cool? Like, I got really excited when I saw this posted on Twitter. So I started digging into it a little bit more. First thing I did is I went to VS Code to go see if I could update my Copilot, but it turns out you can only do that with insiders. So I actually set up the insiders version so I could actually test this out. The way you can do that is you can literally just go to code.visualstudio.com/insiders, download it. I downloaded it side by side with my other installation, and then you can go to the extensions and set it up. And as long as you have subscribe to Copilot, GitHub Copilot, it worked perfectly for me. I was able to sync it just fine. And it kind of walks you through all of that here. It does say it's experimental, and it is only in early access, so it's probably not perfect in any way. But the other thing to call out is Copilot Edits is now GA in VS Code. What surprises me about this is Klein and Root Klein, it used to be Root Klein, actually, they're so far ahead of GitHub Copilot, which blows my mind. Like, Copilot Edits should have been a thing 6 months ago, a year ago maybe, to where it was being built. So happy to see it, because honestly, my expense is actually getting fairly high now, running all of the AI tools that I run and being able to use one that I've already been paying for to be able to do some of the stuff I want to do in what seems like a pretty good way. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to start with my first demo. The first one that I did is very, very basic. I'm going to literally ask it, I get kind of specific. I say, I have a stacked bar chart. I want you to go update the colors so that they're all a shade of purple. And notice that it's searching my code base. It doesn't actually know. I'm not giving it files at all. There's no context. I have agent mode enabled down here. And the way that it actually found it was actually kind of phenomenal to me. I actually did not expect it to actually find it. But as it kind of returned it, I'm like, okay, based on the code search, I can see the stacked bar chart in retention settings. Now this is like I said, this is a giant code base. So it's actually going through a lot. Unfortunately, because this is the insider version, all my extensions need to be kind of updated. So that would pop up on my view code there. See, look at that. Absolutely perfect. This is a very simple example. And now, boom, with all purple. So I discarded that because I actually didn't want that change. It was just something I had been working on. I wanted to just kind of like test to see if it could find that. I removed the context here. I'm going to give it another problem that's a lot harder. So I have a portion of I have a page basically that loads in a bunch of data. And most of my stuff has skeleton loaders on it, but this one doesn't because we just haven't added it to it yet. So what I do here is I don't even tell it the code file. So I'm saying I have a page, gift with purchase, that has 4 metric cards near the top of the page. Unfortunately, loading that data takes a while, so I need a stencil effect while loading that data happens. I'd also like to do a stencil on, there's a kind of a drop down below where you can like pick a gift that you actually want to give. And I'd like it to be on there too. And now what I'm doing is I'm like, okay, I need to go remember where to go tell it to look for a stencil. So I'm like, okay, you can go to the AI segments to style the stencils for the cards. My goal is like very vague. I just wanted to go see if it can do that. So here it goes. Now it's searching for gift with purchase, page component, metrics card. And it can see the code. And now it's looking for the AI segments piece to understand how I set up my stencil effects. And now it's actually reading the file. I'm not approving anything here. It's just running all of these steps to kind of accomplish this particular goal here. And now what it's doing is like, okay, I found the relevant stencil loading styles. And now it determines, this is what I was wondering. I have a number chart. I have a sub-component in my gift with purchase that it went and picked up. I didn't even tell it about this file. It picked it up and it said, okay, I'm going to change it in there. I would have been totally fine if it just changed it in my gift with purchase piece, but it makes way more sense. Like I would have wanted to set it up in the number chart. And so now it ends up setting it up. Now it's setting up a bunch of the like loading states. So what it does is it adds like booleans, like is loading products, is loading metrics. And one of the things that caught me off guard here, if you look in the bottom right down here, you can see that this is like highlighted or bold. What I was confused about here for a little bit is that I wasn't sure how to actually know that the code had changed. So you saw me sit there for a bit. And I don't want you to make the same mistake, because if you don't have the file open, you don't actually know that it's being changed, because it's changing files that you don't even have open. So again, you just keep an eye on this. When they're bold, they're either being currently edited or they are edited. And you can also hit this accept button here to accept all the changes. Because sometimes I found that it actually updated two of my files. I had two files sitting there ready to be approved or not, which I thought was very interesting. Now in this case, this actually took longer, but look how long this file is. It's actually a pretty long file. But this is very similar to the way like root code would do it. It's doing it line by line. The one thing I'll say is all it's going to do here is like change a couple lines. So when you get to the end here, you're going to see the diff, and it's going to be a very minuscule amount. But that's fine. Like it has to do that overall diff here. So I just went ahead and accepted that. And now, let's see, it's let me update the template portion. So now it's doing let me update the fetch extensions method to properly handle the loading state for the products. So now what it's doing is I have an API call that calls to basically load in all the products that can be chosen. Now it's wrapping some loading state around that, and that one actually went a lot quicker. And a lot of that is probably just the speed of Claude, to be honest. And again, I am running in Claude 3.5 Sonnet, and I am in the agent mode. So here we go. You can see the Boolean that's being put there, just to kind of like mark that it's loading or not. And I'll show you something here that's really interesting. So now it's adding the animate pulse class effect here. That is exactly what I wanted, because I just want like a nice subtle little pulse on the stencil. And all the code actually looked pretty legit. You can see the if there. So I'm just trying to determine like should I actually send this message or not. But then I realized I'm actually in an org that doesn't have good data for gift with purchase, so it wasn't really an issue with the code that it had done. It was something that I had kind of seen before. And I'm just kind of continuing, kind of going through the code to make sure it's something that I would actually want to commit. And then here, what I want to do is actually was thinking about testing to see if it actually loads, so I can kind of show what it looks like. So here we go. It's going to pull it up here, so you can see that it's. Now I'm actually going to test it. Now you can see the stencil. That looks so much better than it just sitting there and like popping in. So it did it perfectly. I was actually wrong that it wasn't showing. It was just I needed to switch over to a different demo store to actually work on. I skipped ahead a little bit here, and what I ended up doing is I basically want a new chart type created. And this is a fairly complex chart. So basically the chart, you can imagine it like a 3x3 grid, and you pick an item on the left, and then the next grid changes. You pick an item in the middle, and then the next grid changes based on how that data flows. So I'm trying to direct it in the right way. Now, it created it perfectly. It created me sample data perfectly. But because Vision didn't work, I put it in GPT-4o. So you can see I switched the model here. And unfortunately, GPT-4o just isn't great at styling stuff the way Claude is. And the one thing I would say is like if they could get the Vision version of this, and I think it's the beta version of Claude 3.5 Sonnet beta, that would make a big difference, because I'd love to be able to put like screenshots in there to actually tell it to style it correctly. So what I ultimately ended up doing after this ended up working is I actually just took it out into the Claude web interface and said, hey, style it up for me. Boom, it nailed it like absolutely, like gorgeously. So you can see it's working across all of this stuff. I'm going to fast forward just a little bit here. So here I had actually asked it to implement it into my dashboard that I had. And you can kind of see here that I've got a bunch of data starting to be formatted the way I want. They're kind of made up data. The reason that I'm doing this fake data is I actually just want to figure out the data model I need to do so I can actually then replace it with real data with an API call. So what I'm trying to do is like understand the right way to get the interactions working. So there I did a bunch of styling that needed to be done. All right, so really quick here, you can kind of see what I put together here. Basically, you pick a category here, and then it tells you kind of like the initial purchase and then what they buy next. And you can see some of this stuff isn't styled very good. My latest versions that I worked on after this made it a lot better. But in general, I was very impressed with the way this actually worked. So just to kind of close out what I'm doing here, I want to do one just kind of real time to show you. I may have to speed it up a little bit because sometimes Claude is just slower than I would like it to be. So the goal here is I have a series of charts, and I actually want a radar chart, and I would like to have an example of how to use it put into one of my dashboards. So I'm going to just basically put in there, I'm going to say, please create me a radar chart component in my other components in the client folder. You'll find them, you'll have to find where they are. I don't even know if it's going to understand that, but maybe it will. And then implement me an example with fake data in my retention insights dashboard. So this is just to show you, I wonder why it added those 63 references there. That's fascinating. That's not at all what I had happen prior. I'm in Claude 3.5 Sonnet. I do have the agent mode on. Usually it would actually search. I wonder if... Okay, so it put it in the right place. Let's take a look what it's creating in here. I wonder why this stuff is commented out. Let's just accept that and see what happens. Maybe it'll find that there's an error there. It did name it correctly too, ts.view. That's perfect. I'm confused about the 63 references. I would have thought that it would have just searched something. But maybe it's doing something else behind the scenes. Because that's a lot of references to actually have there. So now it's updating the... Okay, so here's my working set. So purchase path chart. No, that's the old stuff. Now it's updating some stuff here. I am assuming... Yeah, there's my fake data. Let's just see what happens. I still think this is a problem here. It's just kind of weird. So yeah, there's definitely an error in there. I want to go tell it to fix the error. Okay, I mean, I'll accept that. Let me see what it changed. There we go. I see what it did. And let's take a look at that dashboard here. Check that out. There is my radar chart at the bottom. Pretty nicely styled, implemented. I did very little. And again, this is a giant code base. Oh, actually, it's still doing something. What's it doing right now? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and accept that. I don't know. I don't think it actually changed much there. You can kind of see this. Oh, and I also, while I got this up, this is the latest version that I have. So you can kind of see here, this is still fake data. You pick something here, you pick a product. Again, this is all randomly generated because I'm just using this for components. You can just kind of see what I ended up with there is kind of like the flow, the purchase path analysis that I'm working on. Anyway, I had a really awesome day messing with that. Like I said, I have hours of footage that I kind of went through. I have another bit that I could show you, but I don't want this video to get too terribly long. Anyway, have you tried it yet? And if not, if you're already paying for GitHub Copilot, it's probably worth downloading the Insider's version of Visual Studio Code just to try it. I'm going to probably use it all day tomorrow and just continue to see what I can get out of this thing. I have another video planned, which I'm excited about, that I put on hold because of what happened today with this announcement. Anyway, if you like content like this, please like and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts down below. Anyway, until next time, peace out, guys.